She was just 25. Moriah Mo Wilson, young, gifted, unstoppable. The kind of girl who didn't just chase her dreams. She pedaled after them, wind at her back, chasing finish lines like they were promises written in sunlight. She wasn't just a cyclist. She was the fastest rising name in American gravel racing, a sport built for the wild-hearted. But on May 11th, 2022, everything stopped. Her heartbeat, her breath, her story. Someone pulled the trigger. Someone ended it all. Not because she was cruel, not because she was reckless, but because someone else couldn't handle her light. She had arrived in Austin, Texas, just days before the big race. She was confident, calm, focused. The Gravel Locos race in Hico, Texas, a brutal 150-mile journey. Only the best dared to ride. And Moriah, she wasn't just ready, she was favored to win. She stayed with a friend in a quiet part of town. No drama, no fear, no warning. Until the night before the race, when the silence was shattered by 3 gunshots. Neighbors heard it. Surveillance caught shadows. And soon, police found her lying on the floor, bleeding, lifeless. Her bike helmet still beside her. It made no sense, none at all. Who would want to kill Moriah? To understand what happened, we have to go back, to the beginning, to the man they all knew, Colin Strickland. Another cyclist, older, charismatic, and in the same tight-knit racing world as Moriah. Colin had a girlfriend. Her name was Caitlin Armstrong. They lived together, traveled together, but in October 2021, Colin and Caitlin hit a rough patch. They briefly separated. And in that space, that tiny window of freedom, Colin met Moriah. It wasn't serious, or so they claimed, but to Caitlin, it was everything. A betrayal, an unforgivable sin. Even after Colin went back to Caitlin, the jealousy remained. Moriah and Colin still kept in touch, sometimes texting, sometimes seeing each other, quietly. May 11th, 2022, they met again. For a swim, for dinner, for a moment. Moriah didn't know someone was watching. Security cameras showed Colin dropping her off that night, 8:36 p.m. Moriah walked inside the house she was staying in, locked the door, settled in. She never saw it coming. Minutes later, another car arrived. A black Jeep, registered to Caitlin Armstrong. At 9:15 p.m., neighbors heard 3 sharp cracks, like firecrackers, but colder, deadlier. Gunshots. Surveillance caught a shadow moving in the dark, a figure disappearing back into that Jeep. Inside the house, Moriah lay on the bathroom floor, shot in the head and chest. No sign of struggle, no forced entry, just a clean, calculated execution. By morning, the police had questions. Why was Caitlin Armstrong's vehicle near the scene? Why did she lie about not knowing Moriah? And why did she suddenly vanish? The walls were closing in. Police confronted Caitlin Armstrong. They asked about the Jeep, the timeline, her jealousy. She didn't flinch, didn't break. They let her go, just for now. But within 24 hours, she disappeared. Gone. No phones. No credit cards, no trace. Like she'd evaporated into thin air. What they didn't know yet was that she wasn't running aimlessly. She had a plan, and that plan would take her halfway across the world. Caitlin Armstrong sold her Jeep for cash, booked a last-minute flight out of Newark, New Jersey. Destination? Costa Rica. And when she landed, she transformed. Hair dyed darker, features altered with cosmetic surgery. Even her name changed. She became Ari to locals, a mysterious yoga teacher in a beach town called Santa Teresa. She smiled. She taught classes. She drank wine on the shore as the waves washed away her past. But she didn't know. The past was catching up. Back in the U.S. Marshals were tracking every lead. They followed her financial trail, her digital footprints. They spoke to plastic surgeons in Costa Rica. And then, a break. A local tip. Someone saw her, living in a hostel, carrying multiple passports, acting strange. Resurrection Relevant appeared in a search for a Costa Rica passport. It's not an unusual thing for a person to do. Many people move around and change their names to get away with crimes. But it's also not a common name. It stands out. Even if no one was watching the local news, Caitlin Armstrong's name would have stood out. She'd killed, and now she was hiding. Even as she tried to put a new life on a new page, she couldn't keep up with her old past. For on June 29th, 2022, over 40 days after she vanished, Caitlin Armstrong was arrested on foreign soil. Her face looked different. Her name was fake. But her eyes? They gave her away. Extradited to Texas. Shackled, silent, and no longer in control. Caitlin Armstrong returned to a country ready to ask questions and demand answers. The murder weapon? Found at her home. Her Jeep? Seen circling the house before the killing. Cell phone data? Put her at the scene. But even with all the evidence, she said nothing. Not a word. Not an apology, not even a tear. Meanwhile, Moriah's parents sat in the courtroom, heartbroken, waiting for justice. October 2023, the trial of Caitlin Armstrong began. It was a room filled with sorrow, with grief, and with a single unspoken question. Why? Why kill a young woman full of life? Why destroy families? Out of jealousy. Prosecutors painted Caitlin as a woman consumed by obsession, a woman who tracked Moriah's movements, read her messages, and followed her to Austin, a woman who couldn't let go. The defense? They tried to cast doubt, but the evidence was louder than any words. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecution unveiled their timeline. 8:36 p.m., Moriah walks into the apartment. 9:15 p.m., Caitlin Armstrong's SUV is seen circling the block. 9:21 p.m., gunshots. 9:22 p.m., Moriah's heartbeat stops. They showed texts, maps, surveillance. They showed a woman unraveling, a woman who tracked her boyfriend's past like prey. Colin Strickland sat in the back row, unable to lift his eyes. He wasn't on trial, but his silence echoed just as loud. Moriah Mo Wilson was more than just a cyclist. She was a sister, a daughter, a dreamer. She left behind a world that needed her. She once said she wanted to make cycling more inclusive, more kind. She rode with grace, she lived with light, and she died before her time. At her memorial, friends wore bike helmets and brought sunflowers. They didn't talk about how she died. They talked about how she lived. But the story didn't end in the courtroom, because Caitlin tried to run again. October 2023, just days before the trial's end. While being escorted at the jail, she bolted. She ran, but not far. Officers tackled her after a brief chase. Later, they found she'd trained for weeks, doing crunches, sprints, even trying to bend her leg shackles. It was desperate, pathetic, one last attempt to escape justice. And it failed, just like everything else she tried to do. The jury deliberated for just over 2 hours. When they returned, you could feel the tension rise like a storm in the room. Guilty, on all counts. Moriah's mother wept. Her father whispered a prayer. Caitlin showed no emotion. Not a tear, not a twitch, just cold silence. She was sentenced to 90 years in prison. But no sentence could ever bring Moriah back. No bars could undo the pain. On a warm July morning, just months after her death, Moriah's loved ones gathered at a trail she used to ride. She didn't die a cyclist. She died a daughter, a friend, a woman who simply loved and was punished for it. Her name will outlive the one who took her, and every pedal stroke, every ride in her name is a reminder that light doesn't vanish, it rides on. This wasn't a love triangle. It was a ticking time bomb. Because what Caitlin Armstrong felt was never love. It was possession, territorial, paranoid. She wasn't just watching Colin, she was watching every woman who smiled at him, every text, every like on Instagram. She created a mental list of who needed to be erased. Moriah was just the last on that list. Colin Strickland has spoken little, but when he did, he said he never thought Caitlin was dangerous. He said he didn't think she would snap. But how could he not see the signs? She followed him, she checked his phone, she asked about Moriah daily. He told the court, "If I could go back, I would do everything differently." But words don't bring back the dead. And silence can be just as loud as a gunshot. Everyone wants to believe it's not their fault, that love can't kill. But the truth? Love doesn't kill. Jealousy does. Control does. Silence does. Moriah never got to tell her side, so we must tell it for her. She was kind. She was forgiving. She didn't know Caitlin hated her. She never saw it coming. That's what hurts the most. She never even got a chance to fight back. Sometimes, at night, Moriah's mother still texts her, just to feel close. "Miss you, Mo. Ride safe. Wish I could hug you again." But there's no reply, just silence. And in that silence is a mother's endless grief, a father's shattered soul, a brother's aching heart. What Caitlin stole wasn't just a life. She stole futures, memories that would never be made, weddings, grandchildren, finish lines, all gone. Moriah Wilson's story didn't end in that apartment.
It lives on in every trail named after her, and every rider who pedals for justice, and every girl who dares to chase greatness. She once said, "I ride because it makes me feel free." Now, her spirit rides with every gust of wind, every sunrise over the hills of Vermont. Moriah is more than a victim. She's a symbol of love, of loss, of stolen potential. And though she's gone, she still leads the way. One ride, one memory, one heartbeat at a time. So now, we're left with a single, heartbreaking truth. Moriah Wilson should still be here. She should be riding the hills of Texas, laughing with friends, feeling the wind against her face. But instead, her life was stolen. Not by fate, not by accident, but by jealousy and a silence that screamed too late. As you sit with this story tonight, I want to ask you something. How many warning signs do we ignore because we don't want to see the truth? How many lives could be saved if we just chose to listen? Moriah Wilson had a bright future, but someone decided she didn't deserve it. If you believe her story deserves to be remembered, share this video, speak her name, and ask yourself, what would you do if the person you trusted the most became the one you feared the most? This is not just Moriah's story. It could be anyone's. It could be yours.